Peace and blessings, everybody. Chrysalis Sun here, and welcome to my Sisterhood series, What Kills Sisterhood. And this particular video is the first video of the series. If you've tuned in to my introductory video, basically what the series serves to do is just open up conversation and candid dialogue around sisterhood. Specifically, how sisters relate to other sisters. Now, it's no secret that, the way that we relate with each other is not healthy. There's a lot of just really negative patterns of behavior, toxic behaviors, and just really traumatic experiences that a lot of us as sisters have with our fellow sisters. So the purpose of the series is to really just take a critical look at, all the different ways that we as a collective, as women, kill sisterhood. And once we really open up that conversation, and address, those topics, then we're going to discuss how we can heal sisterhood, right? So the first thing that I want to address, or the first topic that I want to get into, is the mother wound, right? How we as women relate to our mothers and how our relationships with mothers have shaped our relationships with all of the women that we interact with, all the women that we have relationships with. Now, to be honest with you, I've recorded this video a couple times. It's a very difficult video to do because, pretty much every topic in the series is going to be heavy, but, our relationships that we have with our parents, both with our mother and our fathers, are the heaviest. It's the heaviest. It's ridden with the most traumas, the most pain, and a lot of times most of us don't even want to address these traumas that we have with our parents, specifically with our mother. So this is really like about the fourth or fifth time that I've recorded this video, because what I really want to do is just like, how do I address this heavy topic, one, concisely and comprehensively, but two, in a way where, it's the most constructive conversation that could be had, right? Without getting sucked into the pain points that arise based off of, how we feel about our mother. So yeah, this is a couple go-arounds with this video, but what I want to do is just be very, honest, because that's what this series is about, is just being honest. Now, I'm leading with our conversations about our mother because our mothers are our very first connection to the divine feminine. So our mothers are our very first examples of sisterhood, and it starts in the womb. So obviously, as babies in the womb, we're connected to our mothers physically, through the umbilical cord. That's how we receive our nourishment. But also, we're aware, we're present spiritually with our mothers in the womb. So we are aware of her emotions, what she's going through, her thoughts, what she's speaking. We're also aware of her environment. And, let's be real, a lot of our mothers have not had pleasant pregnancies with us. Some of our mothers have, but a lot of us who are, have difficult relationships with our mothers, it started in the womb because, there were different things going on with our mothers when they were pregnant with us, whether, they were in chaotic environments, whether or not they were in violent households, whether or not they were at odds with their families, at odds with, our fathers, the father of their children or their child. Some of our mothers have been the victims of sexual assault, and that's how they become pregnant with us. We have some mothers who got pregnant too young, and they didn't know what to do. We have some mothers who got pregnant unexpectedly. They really truly didn't want to have children. They weren't ready for children. So all this stuff is going on before we even come out, before we even enter into this world. Now, the reason why this is important is because on a scientific level, whatever's going on with our mothers gets passed on through our DNA. Really, whatever goes on with our mothers are our fathers. But specifically our mothers, because again, that's our most closest, our strongest bond. we're birthed from our mother. So we experience what she experiences before we experience anything else. And it's encoded into our DNA. So, that's the evolutionary process. Excuse me. That's the evolutionary process. So any experience that our mother or our lineage of mothers, or really any of our ancestors have, gets coded into our DNA. So any type of trauma, any type of painful experience, anything, even any type of healing that they may do, it gets coded into their DNA, which gets programmed into our DNA once we're born. So what essentially happens is that we are programmed with the experiences of our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, and so forth. We're encoded with that before we even, as we come into this realm. And that's before we have our own experiences. So we really come in already with a pre-programmed relationship to sisterhood, just off gate. And I want to take a moment to have a sidebar, because for those of us who have children, I don't have children yet, but for those of us who are mothers, and specifically those of us who have daughters, what this means is that we set the standard for how our daughters relate to other women. And so for those of you who have daughters, it's so important to really be mindful about how you're relating to your daughter, because this is something that she'll carry essentially for the rest of her life, and take it into any relationship that she has with other women, whether it's friendships, whether it's her own children, whether it's, if she has intimate or romantic relationships with other women, so we set the standard for our daughters, our sons too, but, we're talking about sisterhood. So this is specifically to our relationships with our girls, women. So we come in with this programming, and what ends up happening is that a lot of times we have mothers who, have their own challenges. We have mothers who have, their own healing work that they need to do that they may or may not be doing. We have mothers who have mental illnesses, and a lot of times when we're young, we don't realize that our mothers have a mental illness until we get older. So we have a lot of mothers who raise us as in their bipolar, they have clinical depression, they are schizophrenic, and that's how they're relating to us. We have a lot of mothers who have, who are victims of domestic violence, and then that's how they're relating to us. And that teaches us how we interact with other women. And then we carry that. Now, what I've come to realize is that those of us who have mother wounds specifically, and it actually really all of us, I won't say that, all of us tend to interact with women based off of how we either interact with our mothers or how we would like to interact with our mothers, right? So, for example, I have a very close friend, whose mother is a drug addict, and her mother has mental illness. And so my friend, who is identified as a lesbian, she tends to attract or be attracted to women who she feels like she has to save. So women who are emotionally or mentally unstable, women who need to be taken care of, women who have extreme mood swings, women who talk to her, disrespect her verbally, because that's how her mother speaks or has a history of speaking with her. Those are the women that she tends to attract and be attracted to. And really what it is she's replaying her interactions with her mother, essentially, because having to take care of her mother, have to make sure that her mother doesn't, go off on drug binges, have to make sure her mother is, eating, having to make sure that her mother is taking care of herself, going to the hospital, all of that. With her growing up with that, that's how she interacts with the relationships with her girlfriends, and her friends too, because, she's my best friend. So, she's very nurturing. She's always, very self-sacrificing, always making sure everybody else is okay, making sure taking care of everybody else. That's how she interacts with women. You know, so that's one example of that. So we take that in, you know, we take that in and then we carry that. Another thing too is a lot of times we end up interacting with sisters based off of what we did not receive from our mothers. So a lot of sisters end up codependent or having these expectations of other sisters as though those sisters are supposed to give them things that their mother didn't give them. And that creates a very unhealthy, volatile interaction, relationship with your friends, your sisters. You know, because at the end of the day, I'll say this from my perspective. I'm not responsible for what my sister didn't receive growing up. I'm not responsible for the nurturing that she didn't get from her mother. Now, as a sister, yes, I'm going to extend nurturing, you know, in a way that is organic and authentic to me, but I'm not going to extend that mothering, nurturing that she didn't get from her own mother. That's not my responsibility. And what ends up happening is that a lot of sisters go into interactions with fellow sisters expecting that, and then when they don't get that, they get upset. There's tantrums, they act out, they lash out the same way a child would lash out at its mother. And that's what I see with these mother wounds that aren't addressed. You know, I see these sisters that literally their inner child is throwing a tantrum. And on the flip side, with us, as you know, sisters that are on the receiving end of that tantrum, we don't know how to relate to that because we're not prepared. A lot of us aren't prepared for that. And really, we don't have to relate to that. We can choose to step away from that if we don't want to deal with that. And that is our right. That's our right to extend that boundary. So, you know, a lot of times with sisters, you know, they're carrying this resentment, this anger that they have towards their mothers. And if they can't express those directly with their mothers, they end up subconsciously throwing and projecting that anger and resentment out on their friends, their female friends, their sisters, their physicals, their blood sisters, their aunts, their female elders, their cousins, their female boss at work, like, you know, whoever they feel is a mirror or representation of that mother figure. And that's very unhealthy. It's very unhealthy. So, you know, it's something that definitely needs to be looked at, especially because, you know, like I said, our mothers are our very first interaction with sisterhood. So we can't at all address any of the other issues with sisterhood unless we first address the first root, which is how we relate to our mothers. So, you know, my own experience is that, for me personally, like my own experience is that I realized that, yes, I haven't had a balanced or a completely healthy relationship with my mother. It did get to a point where it wasn't in my best interest to maintain close ties with my mother. So we went through a point, maybe about 1.5 to 2 years, where we didn't speak. I had to set that boundary. In that time, I really worked on, one, addressing my own mother wounds, excuse me, but also, you know, really working on what I could do to have a healthy and improved relationship with my own mother. Because what I also realized too was that in addition to me having my issues with my mother, I had some female friendships and interactions that weren't really healthy either. And I connected the two. I realized like, oh my goodness, I'm interacting with these friends the way that I would be interacting with my mother. You know, on two ends. One, you know, any type of program that I received with my mother, you know, from my mother, I carried that, but also me interacting in a way where I'm kind of subconsciously seeking what I didn't get from my mother in these female friendships. And then when I didn't get it, it was a very strong wound for me. So I'm like, okay, I need to step back and I need to address this. I need to figure this out. So I need to, one, identify what these issues are, these mother wounds are, because what it is that when we interact with our sisters, we need to understand the difference between if they're actually truly doing something that's causing us harm and hurting us, or if they're doing something that only reminds us of our mother or our mother wounds and we're triggered. You know, so for example, I'll give an example. For me, I work on boundaries. you know, because that's something else too that'll be a whole nother discussion, is boundaries with sisterhood. But those of us who have mother wounds have a harder time setting boundaries with women, you know. So, you know, I had to work on my own boundaries. And so what I started doing was setting firm but loving boundaries with my sisters, and those of sisters who had their own mother wounds, specifically with, you know, rejection or not receiving love and nurturing from their mothers, or their mothers not being present. They interpreted my simple boundary as I'm rejecting them. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not the reality. The reality is I'm just setting a boundary for my own self-care that's got nothing to do with you, but because you have an issue with or a wound around rejection, you're perceiving any boundary that I'm setting as, oh, I'm rejecting you because you've been rejected by your mother. You know, so while I'm working on my own thing with my boundaries, I'm encouraging my sisters to work on their own self-worth and their emotions around rejection and feeling worthy, because that's really what that boils down to, is feeling worthy. You know, and what I understand is that when we don't get the love and the nurturing that we need from our mothers, if we don't have that loving bond from our mothers, it translates as a low self-worth. We internalize that we're not worthy of our mother's love. And then we go into our sisterhood relationships, or sister relationships, with that subconscious thinking. And then what ends up happening is we can't even become close or even really bond with our sisters, because subconsciously we're feeling like we're not worthy. So one, there's a constant rub around that. But then two, we're not receptive to any type of love that our sisters may be showing us, because subconsciously, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. That's because that's the message we got programmed from our mothers. So I mean, this mother wound is so deep. It's so deep, and there's so many layers to it, and there's no way that I can cover it in one 20-30 minute video. But it's just something I wanted to present, something that we can just look at, we can just explore, we can sit with. So again, women with dysfunctional relationships with their mothers are never able to have a close, healthy, intimate, sisterly relationship with other women, because it's just there's no framework, there's no programming for that, there's no blueprint for that. We don't even know what that looks like. So if we really want to start on the path to healthy relationships with women, we have to start with how we relate to our mother, period. Okay? So the biggest thing is checking our triggers. You know, I know for me, what ends up happening is, because of my position, a lot of women come to me, sisters come to me, and they see me as a mother figure. And this could be a blessing and a curse. So, you know, they see me as a mother figure. And, you know, I do embrace that, because, you know, like I said, I don't have physical children of my own that I've given birth to. So it allows me to cultivate that mother nurturing, you know, towards my sisters, you know, in my own organically healthy way, you know. It allows me to start cultivating and practicing that. However, the rub is that, you know, my energy both attracts and repels. So, you know, with the way my energy is, I'm going to automatically mirror and bring up your triggers. That's just how my medicine works. You know, as a medicine woman, the purpose is to bring that up so it can be healed and addressed. And so what ends up happening is that I will do things, or I will be in a way where it'll just automatically trigger and remind that sister of her mother. So I've had a lot of women drawn to me because of my motherly energy, my mama bear energy, but I've had a lot of women become upset and retaliate and be deeply triggered and extremely volatile towards me because I remind them of their mother, and they did not have a healthy relationship with their mother. I've had quite a few sisters tell me that. And the wound is so strong sometimes that the sisters they'll block themselves off because they don't want to address it. They don't want to, it's too painful. But it's got to be addressed, because essentially if it's carried, you're going to pass it on to your children. And then the cycle just continues. Because again, where we stand as a collective, a conscious collective, is based on generations of this sisterhood disconnect that has been going on for generations. So how I relate to sisters is how my mother relates to women, and how my mother relates is how her mother, my grandmother, relates, and how my grandmother relates is how my great grandmother relates. And I know in my line on my mother's side, how they interact with women has not ever been healthy. There's anger, rage, lack of nurturing, pain, trauma, physical, verbal abuse, ego, narcissism, expectations. That's all encoded into the DNA and how we look at women and my family on my line. And so I understand that if this isn't addressed, this is something that I can potentially pass on to my children. And the reason why this needs to be addressed is because, the collective consciousness is moving towards healing. And women, like I said in the What Kills Sisterhood introductory video, women, we are the creators of culture. So in order for the collective consciousness to transition into healing, the collective consciousness needs the nurturing of the divine feminine, but the divine feminine needs to be whole and healthy on a communal level, because women, we're communal in nature. So it is in my best interest to heal my wounds around sisterhood and the mother wound, as much as it is for my best friend, with her things with her mother. And, the women clients that come to me. You know what I'm saying? Because, the society needs us whole and healthy as a collective. And our divine masculine needs to see that. And our children need to see that as well. Oh, shoot. So, sorry. Okay, I'm outside and I got some bugs. All right, we're good. Woo, okay, so I don't do well with bugs, and I'm outside, y'all, so my bad. But that kind of breaks up the, gets me back on track or whatever. So, anyways, I have notes. I want to make sure I talked about everything that I wanted to cover. Okay, so I think that's all I want to say. I'm not going to provide solutions as of yet. I just want to bring up each topic, and spark a dialogue. And then when we get into birthing sisterhood, I will talk about how we can connect with the mother wound and heal it and better our relationships with our mothers, thus bettering our relationships with women, our sisters. So I don't want to get into that aspect until I address all of what kills sisterhood. But what I will say, for those of you who feel called to really, or who are moved by this talk and who really want to explore your mother wounds, what I invite you to do is just sit down and really reflect on your relationship with your mother. And then those of us who have relationships with our mothers, and there's all those of us who don't, because either our mothers weren't in our life, our mothers might have passed away, or our mothers we may be adopted, so there's both sides to it, whether our mothers were present and where, our mothers aren't or weren't. But at the same time, what it means is, regardless of what it is, just sit with how you relate to your mother. How do you relate to the divine mother, your mother? How do you feel about her? What is your relationship with her? Do you have a relationship with her? How do you feel when you're around her? How does she trigger you? And once you connect with how your mother triggers you, then start connecting the dots. Start seeing ways in which your friends or female sisters, or your sisters, your female friends, or the women around you have triggered you, and if any of those triggers are the same triggers that you've experienced from your mother. So then that way you can start to separate the two, because that's what we need to do first, is we need to separate our traumas and triggers around our mothers from our sisters, so we can address that. And then that way we can start to see that our sisters' actions, like our sisters are not our mothers. They're not our mothers. But in order for us to see that, we need to separate. We need to separate the two. We need to separate those triggers from the actions of our sisters. And then that way, when we start interacting with our sisters, then we can discern between, okay, I'm triggered because my sister said this, and this is the way my mother used to talk to me, and now I'm upset and pissed off because my mother used to say that. Or you can discern between, my sister said that and it was disrespectful and I didn't like it, and and I need to address that she offended me. Because what it is your sister could have said something that you needed to hear, but because it reminded you of something your mother used to say, now you're upset. Now you're not receiving what she's giving, which is a different from, an interaction with the sister where she truly triggered you, where she truly did something, that might have harmed you or might have, truly offended you, if that makes sense, So, what the mother wound, start to really process the difference between, your shit and your sister. Because if it's your own shit, she's not responsible for that. She's not responsible for how your mother treated you. She's not responsible for giving you what your mother didn't give you. She's not responsible for that. She's not even responsible for nurturing. Some sisters don't know how to nurture, and that's not in them. And that's okay. They've got other medicine, other things to bring. That's a different type of, medicine, a different type of magic that doesn't involve mothering. Not everybody can do the mothering thing, and that's okay. But you have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with that. You know what I'm saying? So that's this week's talk. Drop comments. Drop comments and reach out to me, share anything that may have come up. I want this to be an active dialogue. Let me know what you take from this. If anybody needs resources about how to, address, mother wounds, reach out to me. I got some books and some links and some resources, some exercises you can do, and that'll get you going until we start really talking about birthing sisterhood and healing the mother wound. But before we can heal the mother wound, we got to figure out what our mother wounds are. All right? So that's it. Enjoy, and you have blessed time. Peace.